Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons, unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm joined by Mary Mbugua, the CEO and founder of Risk Response Africa. Now, Mary leads a firm that's redefining how organizations think about risk, not as a compliance checkbox, but as a driver of efficiency and resilience. Her company works across enterprise risk, data privacy, cyber resilience, and business continuity, whilst also running the Risk Response Academy to upskill professionals across Africa. Mary, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
It's my honor, Lawrence. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so for the sake of our viewers and listeners, I've positioned Risk Response Africa and all the various sort of facets within it to a certain degree. Could you give us a little bit more context? That would be amazing.
Absolutely. So Risk Response Africa, being my very, very small baby, is a passion project for myself. Having been in the industry for over 10 years, having worked across Africa, we've truly identified that there is a need and a humongous gap when it comes to effective risk management. A lot of businesses are doing good, but there's potential and a huge vacuum to do greatness and have greatness in the industries and the domains that these organizations operate in. And hence, we identified the need, one from a practical perspective, where we listened to the customers and the people we were engaging with, who we dearly take at the highest regard as our key stakeholders, being that we want to address their needs and expectations when it comes to effective risk management. As you rightfully put it, risk management is a business enabler. It's not just about identifying the pitfalls. It's about working with the company and the organization to a sustainable, very beautiful future for them that allows for innovation, for growth, as well as sustainability to be there for the long term. Whether, again, if the organization is specific on key domain areas in the organization or looking to have what I want to entrench in the market as an accountability partner to work with them throughout the journey to really inculcate a risk management culture, regardless of the domain, be cybersecurity or data privacy or enterprise risk management in totality. We want to give the organization that support and guidance throughout its different growth phases to allow them to truly entrench themselves in their different growth phases, whether it's locally, if you're looking at your domestic market, or even globally. We're here to support through and through.
And speaking about markets, Mary, what are your core focus markets?
So our core focus market is Africa, but it's pretty interesting because by virtue of just us being in existence, we have actually interest from the European market, which shocked me. And I had a session with somebody yesterday, but our focus has been primarily Eastern Africa, a bit of Southern Africa. But now we're more interested to open up our palette, to open up our interest areas and focus now on a more global market to look at the European market, Middle East, as well as African market.
And when you first founded Risk Response Africa, you mentioned that the core problem that you were trying to solve was effective risk management. How has that problem evolved over time?
So risk management, I want to say it's a new concept. It was never really inbuilt as a key strategic driver for the organization. Majority of the forward thinkers in the different domains that we have worked in, that's finance, telecommunications, a bit of insurance. We've seen it as a reactive process that's embedded within the organization. And it being reactive means it's siloed. A handful of people appreciate and exactly know what risk management is and how to best apply it in their own operating context. A lot of publications have been out there, but again, in terms of practicability and implementation, it has never been effectively been contextualized for the African context. We have key regulations, key drivers, key barriers, if you will, within the African operating context that redefine and demand a redefining of risk management in the context of operating in Africa. In more advanced markets, things like corruption, things like reputational damage hold a higher bearing or a higher weighting to which people may want to refrain. It's not the same in Africa. It's part of doing business in Africa. Then how do we navigate that and ensure that we are not only, one, effective in our market, that we are providing the value and services as we want to, but also position ourselves as a reputable firm in a global market. If we adopt certain practices, it sends a different message globally. So we have to contextualize and rethink risk management from a different operating context that is influenced by a different set of business practices in Africa. And unfortunately, being that it is siloed, there's not a lot of industry benchmarks that are available for the African context. So we borrow a lot from the international scene. When it comes to applicability, there's that breakdown in communication as well as appreciation. I typically talk about upstream and downstream communication. That's the flow of organizations working in the flow of decision making in the organization. If there's a break somewhere, there will always be catastrophes to materialize, as well as serious implications, serious consequences, whether those are fines, a bad reputation, or financial implications. And that's what we have seen. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap, and communicate to all stakeholders, those with an interest within the organization, and those already entrenched in the organization who also have a need and expectation. And we have to bridge that gap and talk their language. When it comes to tech, it's a no-brainer. Technology and data are part of business today. If you're not leveraging on that, there's something wrong with your business model that needs to be rethought and improved upon. When it comes to the key decision makers, there is also a mismatch of the language and the implications. So we have to bridge that too.
You mentioned the need to recontextualize risk management within African organizations. How do you see risk management becoming a strategic advantage rather than being viewed as a cost center in that African organization setup?
That's a brilliant question. As you rightfully put it, a lot of key decision makers think of non-revenue agencies within the organization as a pain point. Why do I need to invest in it if I'm not going to get a return on it? So we have then to demonstrate the return on investment for the key decision makers in the organization, pouring out to effectively, one, optimize risk management, and then two, centralize it within the organization for it to be a key driver of success. What we're concerned with regards to risk management is two things: the pitfalls and the opportunities. Majority of risk management efforts are typically geared towards the pitfalls. What we want to bridge and how this has to be contextualized in the African context is it to be a business enabler. Yes, we can foresee these pitfalls ahead of us, but in addition to that, there are also opportunities that we can leverage on that will accelerate the attainment of objectives or the attainment of our strategic intentions. To this regard, then, how do we effectively communicate that? It all boils down to ROI. Nobody wants to listen to you, especially at board level or at senior executive level, if you cannot translate money to them. If you cannot translate, I am reducing your incidences by 50%, and that will save us about 50 million per annum Kenya shillings or whatever currency you're working with year on year. If you cannot consistently and effectively communicate and speak the key decision maker's language, it's all futile. But it also is dependent on the top-down approach. The senior manager has to buy into the concept of effective risk management, and then consequently must trickle it down to the end user. The end user is usually one of the easiest points of concern for us, because that's an area of human error. And if one component of the whole chain is compromised, everything fails. So it is a symbiotic relationship that allows for the top-down approach to be embedded within the organization and also communicate to the various stakeholders along the organization's hierarchy for them to fully appreciate their role with regards to risk management and how they feed into the big picture of strategic objectives attainment.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think proving ROI is certainly valuable when dealing with those key decision makers who sit at the top of the company. Oftentimes, the requirement from an IT or a technical perspective for a cybersecurity solution, for example, is a very easy conversion. But to get the key stakeholders who, have the access to the necessary budgets, to get them to understand the risks associated with not implementing the cybersecurity solution is often the biggest challenge. In my experience, when talking about cybersecurity solutions in Africa, often the perception is that, well, a cybersecurity attack will never happen to us. So trying to prove ROI for something that may or may not happen is a real challenge. How do you navigate that?
As you rightfully said, a lot of cyber risk management is reactive. If things happen, there's 100% uptake of cybersecurity programs and solutions within the organization. What we do is try to simulate that, preempt the actual impact, and demonstrate to the organization, whether it's through penetration testing or vulnerability assessment, or even typical cyber drills, just to highlight the exposure the organization currently carries. Let us depict at this moment, at this particular instance, what is your cybersecurity exposure? Now, if we can translate that to you, the end user, as well as a key decision maker, basically simulate a cyber incident or data breach incident, translate that into a financial impact as well as a reputational impact. And on top of that, demonstrate either the capabilities you currently have or the vacuum that you currently carry with regards to cyber capabilities to remedy or respond to such a breach. Once you speak that language, everybody's at attention. Everybody's now is ready, is asking the right questions and will take on the right actions to actively now pursue cybersecurity or cyber risk management into their portfolio of risk management.
So you emphasize automation, dashboards, and templates. Can you walk me through how a client journey looks when you embed those elements into their environment?
Yes. So we typically, as I mentioned, start top down. So we're not trying to communicate very technical jargon to the end user. We want to create dashboards or platforms that have all the stakeholders already embedded or onboarded to allow them to have the full transparency and full exposure of the cybersecurity posture of the organization. If we do not get the requirements right, whatever output we derive is not obvious. Hence, again, it becomes very, very hard for organizations to truly apply or derive some ROI from the investments that they make. So when it comes to automation, it starts typically with needs requirements. I'm a big believer that you cannot improve what you do not measure. So you have to first start and say, what is my most pressing need? What is my key demand of this that I'm doing? Is it led by regulatory obligation or contractual obligation or a business need? And of the business need, what exactly am I really looking to gain out of this? Then we define a matrix that now is contextualized information security or cybersecurity or whatever paradigm of risk management we're trying to look at into tasks and items that are of value to the organization. Once we understand that through an enterprise contextual setting workshop, where we have embedded all the relevant stakeholders in those sessions, which is typically a 2-day or 3-day workshop. We go through all applicable laws, legislations, requirements, contractual obligations. We list down the needs and expectations of our stakeholders. Once we have that well documented and stipulated, we define what we call a risk and responsibility matrix. From then, that feeds into our automation processes. What has already been implemented either as a technical control or a managerial control. And managerial controls is typical processes or policies or documented frameworks that can be referenced upon. Once we have that in place, we either align it to best practice, if not already, or if it's not, we align it and then go into the process of automation, which is all about orchestration. So if it is a policy which is in PDF format, we actually make it material and practical. We take the policy statements, embed it at system level, depending on the type of policy. A very simple example, when it comes to clear desk or clear screen, it's a key standard best practice. How then do we apply it tangibly within the organization? It's twofold. At policy level, for clear screen, If you're out of your desk for more than 3 minutes, it automatically logs. That's a simple policy. We orchestrate it. It's by AD or whatever domain you're running. It's automated completely. When it comes to clear desk, now we cannot automate the actual person sitting at the desk with files all over. What we engage is security awareness, again, a process that can be automated. But then we also loop in processes such as internal audit to do spot checks that allows the culture now to be inculcated slowly but surely. And again, we use that carrot and stick method, where you are encouraged based on incentive and you are discouraged based, again, on a consequence. And that highlights the process of automation. It's not a one checklist fits all. We have to contextualize that. Now, if you do not have a team sitting in a office location somewhere, then the elements of clear desk and clear screen in that context differ from a person with a 500-man headcount of personnel sitting in an office complex somewhere. So those are the contextualized items that we must appreciate for it to have a real, tangible output derivative that, again, is of value to the organization and can demonstrate a return on that. What is a return? It's typically twofold. How much are we paying for cybersecurity and how much are we saving from cybersecurity? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, clearly really well thought out process there. Are there any features that have turned out to be must-haves for your clients?
Absolutely. One of the key demand areas, and I'm talking now from the top level decision makers, is performance monitoring and measurement. It must translate somehow. So we have to have key performance indicators to show us two things. One, our maturity in alignment with either the obligations that we are supposed to carry. For instance, a majority of Western African nations are required to institute a process for cybersecurity management from the banking authority. This becomes not good to have, it's a must have. So they have to demonstrate compliance on an ongoing basis. There's no way you can demonstrate compliance if you're not monitoring or measuring to show you how far along you are with your maturity journey as prescribed by the regulation from the authority. And again, there are others who run these programs as a good to have. It's something that allows us to market and position ourselves differently from the competition. In this regard, then, key performance indicators and security management as a process in totality that helps to heighten the risk awareness culture in the organization becomes two of the most central and most common things that majority of our decision makers request for. They want to see it physically. They don't want to see the logs that are generated. Translate that data for me. That's what they want to see.
Where, if any, would you say that adoption is tending to break down?
By market sector or industry or domain?
Within your clients, where would you say your clients are struggling to adopt? As I say, if anywhere, it could be that they're not.
I'm actually very, very happy to say from our experience that there's a lot of uptake now, being that, well, cybersecurity in the 2010s was an upcoming feat in Africa. So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of inability of senior management teams to truly appreciate. However, from the 2020s, I think post-COVID, the implications of inadequate risk management, especially from a data security perspective, has significantly changed. I'll give you two examples. One, it's led by fear. And then two, it's led by industry best practice that is up and coming. So by fear is by virtue of incidences occurring in Africa. A lot of cybersecurity breaches were more or less focused in advanced markets. However, attackers now came to better appreciate what is happening in the African context and the transformative growth surge in a lot of industry, large industries in Africa. Finance, telecommunications, insurtech, and fintech really opened up the eyes of the negative players in our ecosystem to truly take advantage of it. So there was a humongous uptake in that. When it came now to best practice, the inculcation and introduction of data privacy laws has tremendously accelerated the adoption of better risk management of a data security or a cybersecurity nature. By virtue of the fines that are being issued out, we do not have necessarily all across Africa obligations of companies to report their data breaches or exposures. However, now with the occurrence of data privacy commissioners and regulations up and coming, there is that need to report, that obligation to report. To this extent, then the organizations are required to report. Hence, you do not want to be in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Hence, an uptick. So in majority of the domains we operate in, that's finance, telecommunications, a bit of healthcare we have seen, schools and education, shockingly, hospitality industry, as well as insurance. There has been tremendous intake. So I cannot say right now that we are seeing a slowdown. It's on the converse. People are now uptaking.
If we look internally at Risk Response Africa, what systems have been non-negotiables for running your company, given that you're essentially checking the consultancy box, but then you also have a training organization too?
Internal processes with regards to IP management, with regards to research and development, completely invaluable. We have to pour in our resources into it, as well as raise the competences internally. From an IP perspective, we are generators of IP. We design, we curate, we come up with courses as well as other learning material, as well as other risk items that allow us then to provide the excellence to our customer base. So when it comes to R&D, it's twofold. The IP development from a cost perspective, as well as the technology perspective. And again, we appreciate whatever is being done in the marketplace. People are miles ahead, at least for advanced markets. But also now we have to rethink technology from an African contextualized perspective. And that's where a lot of R&D are going in. So there's a lot of stakeholder engagement there. And this, again, processes, if we have to be sustainable, what we are preaching for others to do, we have to start doing ourselves. Internally, also automation. It is not a process, it is a necessity for us. We're very busy on those two front ends. We do not have the time, the many hours of the day to focus on administrative work. So things like customer management, things like cost delivery, things like our finances, our procurement processes, all of this, including our own internal risk management efforts, are fully automated. So those are key items that we simply cannot forego. They are a part of us now.
And if we focus on the Risk Response Academy for a moment, through it, what has surprised you the most about how risk professionals in Africa like to learn?
The need and the desire, not just from the Kenyan perspective where we're headquartered, but the interest is so extensively mellowed out, I will say, or heightened across African countries. We have been working in Botswana, of all places that you would think there would be interest and a demand for cyber or risk management courses. This is stupendous uptake there and a demand for it. I would peg it to the new regulations that are being implemented all across Africa. But even beyond that, the spirit of excellence is truly remarkable, I find, for the African context. I would also associate it to two things. And unfortunately, I was just reading a report this morning on the overall African country ratings with regards to their economic opportunities, their global mobility, their fiscal policies, and the quality of life in African markets. It gives us insights to look into what is actually happening in the African context and how well countries are positioning themselves to attract investors into the continent. Two things have stood out for me. One is on the talent. Talent, you could assume it by virtue of the size of the African population, but it also boils down to the expertise and the competence of the African people. They are recognizing the necessity that Africa is becoming now the future. To this extent, people are wanting to not only acquire a skill, that is globally recognized. They want to acquire a skill that is contextualized for the operation, meaning that we're retaining talent in the continent, meaning that we're creating opportunities for investors to come here and find an infrastructure, people included, that is ready for them, to accelerate the economies of Africa as well as the global markets they operate in.
And if we look at your lead acquisition engine today, where are your leads coming from? What's your go-to-market strategy?
When it comes to the academy, it's direct sourcing. We do a lot of social media engagements, and that is how we attract our new customers. By virtue of the organization they may be associated to may not have a training budget to accommodate all their needs. So to supplement whatever they're getting internally, they come to us through direct acquisition. So we're on that front, it's direct business. When it comes to business, it's a business-to-business acquisition model. However, again, we're working on referrals. By virtue of the work they've carried out, people want to have an equivalent of it or to the same stature. Because again, what we're trying also to do is raise that industry benchmark, which again, we have found a vacuum in.
And if we apply the same question to the consultancy side of Risk Response Africa, what does that acquisition engine look like today?
It's purely the same thing, business to business, but again, also the referral. Well, our key driver here is to communicate the best practices, yes, but also again, contextualize it for the different domains you work in. So the finance sector, again, is influenced by a number of commonalities that are irrespective of the nation or jurisdiction you're working with. Same with privacy, irrespective of the jurisdictions you're working with. So if you can inculcate a management system as your basis, then leverage upon it best practice, and then add on to it the contextual aspect, then you have a really solid framework at group level. Allow me to use that because we're also working with multinationals who are headquartered in multiple locations all across Africa. But then majority of the excellence is centralized, for instance, in Kenya. Then what happens to best practice being calculated down to the markets in Uganda or Rwanda or Malawi, who may have a delay in raising a reciprocal data protection law, for instance. However, you have to maintain that data transfer agreements or contingencies in place to be adequate or commensurate to what you already have practicing at the head office. So we're looking at, when we talk about benchmarks, is you're creating systems that can be applied globally, but in the African market. One headquartered office stretching out to multiple locations all across Africa.
Have there been any sectors or regions that you found really tough to crack?
Yes. By virtue of the authority being the regulators, some are very proactive. Majority of the central banks in all across Africa are very proactive. They want to adopt best practice when it comes to risk management, which is a key strategic driver. It is stipulated in the regulations, you have to have it. And then supplementary to that, you go into the various domains. You have your ESG, you have your cyber and risk management, as well as your resilience. All that must speak under the umbrella of ERM. That's how they structured it. But now take insurance, for instance, as a sector. The regulator is, oh, you have a license, good. If you're going now into bankruptcy, that's where we will show up. But when it comes to raising or heightening the awareness when it comes to best practice, they are a bit slow. It's not commensurate to the financial. Now, where there is a breach between insurance and fintech, that's where the problems arise. There is no synergy among the two. So one is up, one is low. Bridging that gap can become strenuous to the extent where you have to raise the competencies and the awareness and the acceptance levels in one sector comparative to somebody who's already there and understand it, and then for them now to be synchronized.
So once you've established a baseline risk framework, how do you expand the client relationship to more transformative engagements?
We have not yet had to preempt that. We found a majority of our clients are forward thinking. Majority of them are on a transformative journey already and recognize the necessity of having an enterprise risk management that is in touch with their digital transformation journey. And that has been a saving grace for us. In the 2010s, we did experience organizations that did start on the digital transformation journey, but it was very modularized. It was in phases. And unfortunately, most of those phases did not come together. In the 2020s, what we have seen is majority of these organizations are taking a long-term digital transformation strategy that is phased out, but all phases speak to each other. And they're speaking to the different high-risk areas, we would say, that is important for the organization. For instance, client acquisition as a strategic driver. It may seem so easy. It may seem so, it's part of business. But for organizations who truly understand the convenience expectations of our customers, for them to do business with them or get a service from them conveniently and securely, allows for the organization to prioritize that as an area of digital transformation, which then speaks to the entire cycle of the client management throughout the organization. And then you embed cybersecurity in it. And then you embed data privacy in it. And then you embed sustainability in it. Then you embed resilience in it. So it comes full circle on one domain area that touches every area of the business.
And again, if we cast our eyes internally at Risk Response Africa, when it comes to growing your team, assumedly you're looking to attack new markets and grow your footprint, that obviously requires scaling your team and getting more individuals in place. Do you foresee a tension or a friction point there in terms of hiring versus retaining versus finding quality employees?
We are self-serving in that regard, with virtue of getting quality employees. I think we are well positioned from our academy to identify real talent and then pour into them. By virtue of our mentorship and our CSR activities, then we can identify the talent. Equally, when it comes to retention, I think we're doing well. Although, again, there is no definitive commitment for somebody to stay with you perpetually. There will always be that risk. So our incentive package is not just about the benefits, but it also is about growing the person. So talent retention and acquisition is very important for us, and hence it also informed our decision to really pour into our academy, so that then we can get somebody who has that 360 comprehensive portfolio or profile that would make them a winning star for our team, and allow them to remain with us, because again, exposure will grow and grow. I had mentioned earlier about our markets and where we're trying to see we can fit. The conversations I had with a colleague yesterday with regards to expanding to the European market, it was shocking for me, being that this is Europe, it's already advanced, they're doing excellence in that. But there is a need still for capacity in that regard in those markets. So we are training for ourselves, but we're also training for a global market. And I think for us, those will be our two concern areas when it comes to people. We have to empower, but we also have to have mechanisms to retain, but also an aptitude and an attitude to release and let grow. It will serve us in the end. As long as the risk management agenda is being served, that the African context or globally, we are placing the right people where they are needed.
And do you struggle with the balance between building and maintaining a company culture and the remote work environment?
Not at all. Since 2020, what we have seen is people who truly appreciate the value of work, but also the value of a more 360 balanced work life, if you will. So we do have very real conversation with our team members with regards to balancing work and life. And what we have seen, remote work, also from a cost effectiveness perspective, works in our benefit. I do not want to tie somebody 8 to 5. You have your deliverables. You know what you have to deliver to us and at what quality. And we have those quality checks in place already. It is your prerogative, the contract, still from ethical, professional nature, to deliver what is expected of you. So those conversations are hard, are real. But again, you will still have those team members who want a little nudge and a little push. And I believe what we have structured also from a contractual perspective will allow us to do that.
From a partnerships perspective, does Risk Response Africa have partnership relationships to assist them with your go-to-market strategy?
Absolutely. We have partnered into, from a technology perspective, as I mentioned earlier, there are organizations that are miles ahead of us who are already doing exceedingly to meet the needs and expectations of our current customers. So we are partnering on technology with full automation of ERM programs. And that is inclusive of the data, the cyber resilience, the cyber risk management, all through. On the education sector, we're also partnering with commercial training providers, the PCBs and the BSIs, to allow us to provide still that international best practice as a laying the foundation for excellence as we still contextualize for Africa.
And are there any partnerships that have driven the most revenue or reach for you?
Yes. The technology has created a lot of leads for us. There's a lot of automation, again, in alignment with organizations that are already on their digital transformation journeys. But from a business to customer, direct customer, the trainings also, the partners have also allowed us to acquire new customers on that front too.
And as your firm leans into tech, what is your philosophy when it comes to AI and machine learning in risk? Is it a tool? Is it a partner, or is it a threat?
Anybody who thinks AI is a threat needs to rethink their model a bit. But definitely it is a partner, it is an accelerator, it is a leveraging tool for us. We cannot do what we want to do without AI. We're in a digital age. Just on a cybersecurity domain, the amount of data that is collected is insane for you to go through and fully translate that into usable information for a decision maker. Without AI in this digital age, you are not competitive, you are not relevant, unfortunately. So we have to work with technology and AI, particularly AI and machine learning, to help us meet our customers' expectations when it comes to creating those dashboards that make sense for them.
And what would you say your customers' attitude is towards that question?
Definitely to some extent, a bit of a threat. To be honest, the adoption of AI has been not as high as we would expect. What we have seen is robotics automation. That is the uptake that we have seen a lot of organizations really, really delve into to make their processes more efficient and optimize what they're already doing. Building on AI takes time. You have to build a model and again, contextualize it for your strategic objectives or the goals that you want to attain. And it will be a long lead time, I feel, again, backed on the work that we have seen being done. But again, we appreciate the robotics process automation because now then we can start to build those data analytics as soon as now, then inform the AI and the machine learning algorithms to be an accelerant for the business.
If we look ahead, let's say 24 to 36 months in the future, what is the biggest horizon project or the biggest ambition that would really stretch your company?
To roll out our R&D, what has been in the pipeline when it comes to our systems, bridging the gap for enterprise risk management from context setting all the way to getting repeatable, usable information on an ongoing basis. That will be brilliant. And then embedding everything in at least to what we feel are the high risk areas. So whatever is in your top 10 register, if you can translate that into automated processes, leveraging on either AI or machine learning or robotics or whatever infrastructure you're currently carrying, that is applicable in the African context because majority of our customers still learn on enterprise architecture. So if we can create that hybrid system that can be applied for our cloud-based customers as well as our enterprise infrastructure-based customers would be a key differentiator for us.
And what would you say the biggest obstacles are to hinder you from that ambition becoming reality? Is it purely the infrastructure that you've just alluded to, or are there other factors involved?
One is infrastructure, but two is regulations. We applaud the work that is being carried out from a data privacy area, and our infrastructure will align to that. However, regulations are really changing in Africa, and the frequency for this is becoming a bit worrisome for us. So we would like to see an infrastructure that is not tied to the fiscal policy of the country. And unfortunately, the geopolitics come to influence such decisions making.
And if we look back over the last year, what's a decision that you have made that's surprised even you in outcome or process?
Single-handedly, I would say two things. Our academy was a brilliant move, responding to the African context. There's a humongous vacuum in that regard. And we do not train as an awareness process. We truly train, which means that we have designed a competence matrix around that. We do not want just to have the knowledge aspect about it. Let's apply it. In applying it, you have to attest and demonstrate that the application is actually tangible, verifiable, practical, as well as effective. So the competence matrix around that helps us then to effectively influence the career paths of risk management in the various domains, but also comprehensively in the full spectrum of risk management. Two is automation. Automation has been a game changer. I cannot tell you how many nights I spent trying to manage our customers' databases or our social media management process. I'm dealing with social media content creators to fully automating it and being an in-house activity that is planned 3, 4, 5 months ahead, and then it's rolled out without a lot of manual influence on it. So those two.
Mary, if you could go back to your founder self, what's one thing that you'd tell yourself about building a risk firm in Africa?
Oof, that's a good one. Don't give up. Don't give up. The returns are, the journey may be a little bit hard. The obstacles may be beyond your current skill set or your expectations, but hang in there. Get to speak with people who have been where you are. They may not necessarily do exactly what you do, but they have been in African context, so speak to them. Go to the giants of being there and get to learn from them. Do not close yourself off and do not be fearful. Attack it. Go for it. It's worth it.
Yeah, that's would be some really impactful advice to give to yourself. Are there any unexpected strengths that you have leaned on over your journey?
Oh, I didn't know I was resilient. I didn't know I could hunker down and hold on to the reins, even when I'm shaken to my core. Having a solid foundation, whether it is faith or family or friends, is quite important. You do not know how much they're worth until you really need them, especially on the faith. If you're really wally all over the place, it will not serve you. Your friends and family can pour only so much into you. If you do not have a belief in yourself, regardless of your capabilities, just knowing that I can do this, simple as that, then everything can be possible for you.
Well, I can't think of a better note to close this conversation off on. That's some really sound advice. If our viewers and listeners want to connect with Risk Response Africa, where's the best place for them to do that?
Perfect. We are on multiple social media sites. We are on Twitter, we are on LinkedIn, and you can access us through our website. Feel free. We're happy to reach out. I'm equally on LinkedIn, happy to connect and engage.
Amazing, Mary. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It truly has been a fascinating conversation. There seems to be a lot going on at Risk Response Africa, and we wish you all the best, and I'll certainly be keeping a close eye on your progress, and thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. It was an honor. Have a good one.
Thanks. Cheers, everyone.